Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's edition of Horse's Mouth Live. My name is Ellen Rogan, and as always, I have guests that have great information for you to help you grow in every area of your life, especially your business. And today we're going to talk about how to really build your network and leverage the connections that you have. Now, I know you're good at building relationships. That's how you've built your business. But I always find that it's helpful to get a viewpoint from someone outside of our industry in terms of how to build these relationships even that in an even better way. And it's interesting how this conversation came to be. So our guest, which I'll give you his formal introduction in a minute, Mark Carter, is a member along with me with the National Speakers Association Illinois chapter, and he was interviewing me for something that they were doing. And as we were talking, he's so good at building relationships. I was like, oh my gosh, you should come on Horse's Mouth Live with us. So he speaks from experience. So before I bring Mark on and we let him actually share some of his wisdom, I just want to give you a little bit about his background. Mark J. Carter is the creator of Idea Climbing, which I know we're going to talk about today. And it's the result of his 20-year case study in interviewing happy, successful people about collaboration and mentoring, how they really leverage their relationships. He works with business owners and marketers to increase their communication. And this is with their existing clients and new clients. And I think that's so important for advisors to be thinking about not just focusing on their prospects or just focusing on their clients. If they want their business to grow, it's important to think about both of these constituencies. And so he's going to share that wisdom with us today. Mark, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so such a fascinating topic about this idea of building and leveraging our networks. So maybe you can share a little bit with us about how you came to these strategies that you've developed to be great at building networks and teaching other people how to do the same.
Well, luckily, it was in my DNA. I read a self-help book, started reading self-help books in college, and realized when people would share their stories about coaching and consulting, that I'd be happier doing that. So I just naturally, in my DNA, I didn't call it this at the time, but I sought out mentors. I found business owners, people successful in any arena of life, and I've talked to almost all of them. And then I built idea climbing based on the most successful strategies they used. I put into a format that I can actually use now. Now I'm doing it consciously. When I was younger, it was just unconscious competence. Like I said, it was just in my DNA when I was getting out of college.
When we were talking, I loved the story that you shared about setting up a video studio, where many of us have had to, well, all of us have had to go online, and whether you're using Zoom or some other platform, and figuring out how to set all this up. And you shared a story with me about how you got smart fast by interviewing experts on that. So maybe share a little bit more with us about how you've gotten good at finding mentors, whether they're formal ones or informal ones, and how you use that to build your own expertise.
Yes, what I discovered is one of the big things, the mistakes that people make is they'll reach out to somebody cold and say, "Hey, Alan, will you be my mentor?" And that's kind of like asking someone, proposing this marriage to somebody on a first date. You don't know each other well enough to say, "Will you be my mentor?" And I've technically never asked anyone to formally be my mentor. I would pick a problem and I would reach out for them. And what I've discovered with mentoring is it's advice, support, and or connections to solve a problem at hand or create an opportunity. So that becomes a checklist of I come in very specific about I'm starting my speaking career. What can you teach me about this? What mistakes should I not make? I'm starting a new business, so go find a CEO to talk to. How did you successfully start your business? But go in not with just like general life issues, a very specific problem, and find an expert, and that'll help you find mentors. A business owner is different than a rock musician.
What I love about that is it also doesn't seem like it's this huge, long commitment. Someone could be your mentor, from what I'm hearing you say, for 20 minutes. Like you're getting that expertise. And then clearly, if there's a connection, it might go on longer than that. I did have someone reach out to me who I met when I was in Slovenia asking me to be her mentor. And it's not a financial advisor. I was really somewhat unclear. And I did, and I asked her, like, that was her request. Will you be my mentor? I'm like, well, why, why do you want me to do that? And once she got into it, it was more clear that I could really support her and it would be interesting for me as well. But I think that I remember when I joined National Speakers Association, there was a speaker there. I said, will you be my mentor? And I wasn't more specific than that. And luckily he said yes to me. But I love that idea to think, can you say that again? You had it very succinctly said, like to solve a problem. How did you say that, Mark?
It's creating conversations, and I call them mentoring experiences. And your checklist becomes it's advice, support, and or connections to solve a problem at hand or create an opportunity. But those are the three things. And people said, well, I don't get much out of mentoring, and they go in blind into these conversations and essentially just say, Ellen, tell me about your life. If you don't ask for specific advice, support, or connections, you're not going to get most likely won't get a lot of action items to take away from the mentoring experience. You'll just learn about somebody else's life.
Advice, support, and connections. What I love about that, and I'm imagining it's deliberate, is there is an order to that. Because if someone called me out of the blue asking for a connection, I'd probably be less comfortable with that if I don't know them. But if they ask me for advice, like I have, Ellen, I know, whatever, I know you're busy, or I have a specific thing. I'm wondering if you could help me with this. Then I can decide, A, can I do that? B, does it make sense for us to do that? I really, and even support. I think that there's really a beauty in the way that you ordered that. People love to give advice and feel like what they know is important to other people. So when you've done this, is that usually where you start, Mark, was with the advice part?
Yes, it's starting with advice because it can build it. The support is a validation of an idea. It's not just a pat on the back. It's you're on the right track, or maybe you need to change tracks. And connections are the things that are most often left out of mentoring. People just don't ask. And if once you've had an experience with somebody, if it's a good experience, you should be open to asking, who else should I be talking to right now, instead of leaving a meeting without the opportunity to make a new connection.
Um, do you think that anyone can use a mentor at any point in their career, or this is really for people just kind of starting out?
I think as long as you're facing problems, it's at each point in their career. A 20-year-old has different problems than a 50-year-old business owner or financial advisor. But at the end of the day, people are going to be facing problems, and you can shave your learning curve. And one of the things, like just how we met, if you don't want to ask someone just cold to get on the call, give them value. Put them on a podcast, write a blog post or a LinkedIn post, interview them with a video interview like this. I mean, that's how we met. And that's a very intentional thing I did with NSA is I figured I could get involved and cold call people, or I could interview them, and we put up a blog, and I'm getting almost everyone will say yes to an interview, and you're giving them value. You're sharing their genius with more people. So I'm a huge proponent of interview content.
Yeah, and just to clarify, NSA is the National Speakers Association, if you're thinking Mark's got a secret job. And yeah, so if there's, if you're out there listening and you're like, well, great, I don't have I'm not doing live casts, or I don't have a blog, I don't have a podcast, you can or should be writing blogs. You could write a LinkedIn post about somebody, and you could kind of maybe even comment on their posts. I mean, have you used some of these tools in a social media way, Mark?
Well, as far as like promoting them, yes, I've done articles on LinkedIn. Yeah, blogs. This year, for 2 years, it was video interviews. I did a lot of them live and remote, like this one. And then this year, I've been focused on podcasting in a little bit longer format.
Yeah, I love that. And when you can give someone a platform to share their information, they're ready. You're giving before you're asking. Is there some strategy around that in terms of being an effective mentee in terms of what you give back to the mentor?
One of the best things that I ever did was connected my mentors. That's one of the ways that I pay it forward is that I make connections, between if I have two high level contacts that are mentoring me or I've had a mentoring experience, I always ask them about who they need to know, what are they working on, how I might be able to help. So that's a great way to build your network and provide it. Sometimes immense value is by making introductions to for the mentors. Even if you're just getting started out and you're a college student, you have one mentor, then you have two experiences, three, and then you start just making connections. Who do you need to know? Oh, I'm a speaker and I want to know meeting planners, whatever it might be. Ask them who they need to know and help make connections for them.
That's really great because I think sometimes if you're going to someone for help, either you may think, what do I have to offer them? They're more experienced. They're more, they probably have their network. And I would imagine even if you're making an offer and they say, no, I'm good right now, the fact that you asked, I know when I've been in networking conversations and I'll say to somebody, well, how can I help you? They'll look at me like, well, no one's ever asked me that before. I'm like, are you serious? Like, it just is such a way to build a relationship. And because I'm focused on it, I also sometimes think like if I'm in a conversation with someone, and maybe different if they're younger, they've asked for me to mentor them, but it's all about them in the conversation, doesn't really want to
Mhm.
make me continue that relationship.
Well, yeah, you should always add, the same is true for the mentees: advice, support, and connections. You know, give back what people are giving you. And like you said, they appreciate it. Even if you don't know anyone they need to know at that time, you at least asked, which speaks volumes about integrity and your personality, and that you do value relationships. So even if they say no, at least you ask.
So let's talk about people that might be the mentor in this
Mhm.
relationship. And is it always in your experience that the mentor would be the older person or the more experienced person in the relationship?
It oftentimes is, but it doesn't have to be. If a company's looking to bring on millennials, they could talk to a millennial about what are they looking for, how should they hire, what does the corporate culture look like. So it just depends on what your challenge is at hand. I mean, oftentimes, yes, they are, but they definitely don't need to be. And I think that's an overlooked thing as far as actually talking to someone who's younger who might have the professional experience to offer advice, support, or connections.
I'm thinking about a situation with a woman that I know that's younger than me, and I don't think either of us would call it a mentor-mentee relationship because it's both ways. Like, I'm her mentor in some ways, and she's my mentor in other ways. This is a woman that is a genius in social media. Even before, like, everybody was doing it, she ran all the blogs at the Chicago Tribune and then ran all the social media at Crane Chicago Business, and she's always so generous with me in terms of giving me strategies. I remember at the beginning, it was teaching me how to use LinkedIn. So we've known each other a long time. But, I've helped her in other ways in business. So I think sometimes this title of mentor and mentee could be limiting versus, as we teed this up, how to build and leverage relationships in your network.
Well, I think it's all about building and leveraging. And the key there is also leveraging. So a lot of people with networking, they do one and done. I meet you, they have one phone call or one coffee meeting. Well, now it's phone and Zoom calls, and there's no follow up because they're just getting to know somebody. So that if you ask again advice, support, and connections, and you try to provide value, you can check in if it's someone, it could be a client or you might want as a client, or it could be a referral source. Just checking in with, hey, it's been a month or 40 days, whatever it is. What are you working on? Who do you need to know? You can follow up as many times as you want to with that, and that's really important. Is building relationships, not just making connections.
And what I love about that is you're not saying, who do you know that I should know? You're saying, who do you need to know or what do you need? So you're giving, giving, giving. And I was actually on a WhatsApp call this morning with a friend of mine who's in Croatia, And I met her when she was doing some business in Chicago, and she is constantly asking me, how can I help you? How can I support what you're doing, Ellen? And always making introductions, to the point where, I always ask her back, and she usually says, no, I'm good. I just want to, she said today, I was like, how can I help you, Eva? She goes, when as you're doing more and more of what you love, that's going to help me because I love seeing you happy. Okay.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And then she has, over the years, a few months back, she asked me for advice about something. It made me feel so good. She had not that she needed to earn the right to ask me that because we're friends, but it made me feel so good that I could also give back to her. She had built so much we had a guest on a while back named Deborah Poneman, who's just brilliant. And she talked about building relationship capital. So it's
Oh
all what
yeah,
you're talking about, but she framed it in a slightly different way. So,
yeah.
Mark, tell us.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh
I'm
no, I was just
curious
going to
about
say
this idea about idea climbing. So talk to us more about that. It's such an intriguing name.
when I was formally got into mentoring programs and started talking about it. My mentors pointed out that you're doing something different than just mentoring. So mentoring is, a lot of people think it's helping a kid from the south side of Chicago having coffee with a college student, and I was actually providing a structure and a framework to work with them, which I still haven't found anyone else yet. There's software that will match you, but there's no training behind it. It's just a matchmaking software or an alumni database or something like that. And one of my video testimonials, I was watching it, and I don't know how I had missed it a few months before I saw it again. But one of my friends actually said, "Oh, and Mark Carter is great at idea climbing," and he did the hand gestures and explained it really well. And I Googled it, and literally nothing came up. It was I just called a lawyer and said, "Don't even do a trademark search. There's nothing in the database. There's nothing on Google." It gets into rock climbing on the first page of Google, and they filed it, and they did three very broad categories. And she even told me, she's like, they're not going to accept this. This is way too broad, and it basically owned the term in every market. And then within however many weeks it took to get the trademark filed, she actually came back and said, "Oh my God, they allowed you to do it." So I own it in very broad, and now that's the brand that I'm building, because it makes people lean in and ask, what is idea climbing? I'll talk about mentoring, but the idea climbing is more of, tell me more about
So tell me more about that.
that. That's the biggest thing. Is it's building a support system for your big ideas, because so many people, when they have an idea, whether they're an entrepreneur, entrepreneurial, and they want to bring it can be a daunting task. People try to do it alone. So what idea climbing provides is the framework from how to build relationships, how to leverage relationships, and build peers, mentors, and referral sources, and actually have a support system. So you don't have to be going to 5 networking events a week or sitting on Zoom all day. If you do it right, people start referring you business. I mean, that's the holy grail. They start opening the doors for you. So you're not starting every relationship cold. You're actually building what I call emotional equity and building relationships. Like I said, even if it's, hey, let's talk once a month. I have a new person that I'm getting to know that we talk once a week. I have another one that informally we talk at least once a week, and he's read my book. He's helping with my business. The other guy on Fridays at 9 a.m. is starting to help me with my business. But those ones are what really make the difference. And again, if you're calling to ask for value, not ask for referrals, most people will end up reciprocating at some point. But it's a matter of, the biggest thing I can say is actually building a relationship, and by
Yeah. So
intermittent activity.
tell me more about that. So what suggestions do you have? Let's say I'm not in a networking meeting anymore, but someone introduces me to someone and I really like them. We hit it off. There seems like there's some synergies. How do I make sure, is there a system or a suggestion so that I can stay in touch with this person so that really builds to a relationship, not just one great Zoom call?
There's the interview content, like you said, even if it's just a written LinkedIn post, and the follow up about what are you working on and who do you need to know, not just how can I help you, because a lot of
Mm.
people, that's a loaded question, and there's a lot of I don't know, I'm working on 10 things, but by saying what projects are you currently working on, what kind of connections are you currently looking for, you make it easy for them to go through the file in their head and say, actually, I need to know, I need an accountant, or I'm starting a new business. And so asking them what you can do for them, being specific about it. So you don't make them work to have you help them. Make it very simple. What projects are you working on? Who do you need to know? And
That's
then you can
great.
follow up. Like I said, even whether it's once a week, once a month, once every 2 months, the point is you're following up.
And then in your situation, is it like, let's set up another call and maybe you do that at the end of the call that you're on, or is it an email or a text, or what are ways that you find are effective to do that?
When we have a good phone call or Zoom meeting, even if it's first time, I schedule another one. Even if, again, it might be a month or 4 to 6 weeks out, but I get them on my calendar because I want to keep that relationship going. If it was an okay call, I might not set up another call immediately, but I keep an Excel spreadsheet and I have a customer relationship management system so I can see all the names on the spreadsheet, or I can go into the CRM and look up people because it has all of our communication in the CRM. So those are the two ways I do it. The Excel spreadsheet is what I use the most though, because it's a bird's eye view. It has the date, what we talked about, what the next steps are, how to follow up with them, so that it's so simple but so helpful.
That's
Really
what I
helpful.
was gonna ask, because sometimes, like, I have a great conversation with someone and they tell me all about their family or whatever. Like, how do you track that? Do you put a note in your CRM, or is it on the spreadsheet? So there's one column that's or row that's much bigger that you can put those notes in. How do you do that?
The CRM combines all your communication as long as you sign into like Facebook, your email, everything else. When you look somebody up, it has all of your connections, all your conversations in it. On this Excel spreadsheet, I just write what we talked about. Oftentimes, I'll cut and paste an email and literally just paste exactly what they said in the last email. So that way, it's like a tickler file. I realize, I haven't talked to Ellen in 2 months, and we had a good conversation. I think I'm going to follow up with her. So it's just a way to really have everything right there if you don't want to get into like a whole CRM system.
Yeah. Well, I would say most advisors probably have a CRM system because they have to be really good at documenting for compliance purposes. So I'm just, want to encourage you to use that very diligently in the notes section or however your system's made up, that it's not just for client correspondence that you have to keep good track of, but also for networking. What are their kids? What are they up to? Are they just going on a vacation? And I don't think people mind the fact that you put it somewhere where you can remember to ask them next time. They may just think you remembered and maybe you did, or they may not even care that you had looked that up. But the fact that you bring it up again, I imagine, be a really great relationship building tool.
Well, because they realize that you're actually listening to them and you want to know about them, you want to help them. It's not just, hey, do you have any referrals? Here's my ideal client. Who do you know? That's something that can be a turnoff, especially if you just met somebody and it's in talking about something as important as finance. They might know someone you need to know that could be looking for your services, but more than likely they're going to want to get to know you before they refer a friend.
Yep. Yep. No, I love this because, one of my big words is generosity and your focus. And I think why we connected in our conversation that it was all about how can you help that other person, and not to the point where you never make an ask, but that you have built up enough reserve that they're going to want to help you when you have an ask, if there's something that you need. If it's not someone you went to directly for mentoring where you specifically asked for that. So, Mark, are there other suggestions in terms of really tactical ideas that advisors can use to either find new people to network with or build those relationships, or even like, what about the person you talk to and you realize, wow, it's been 8 months and I never followed up with them? Like, what might be a good way to ping them again to build that, to continue to build?
Asking them what they need and what we had talked about before. The big one is interviews. I can't say enough about the interview. I get like 90% success rate plus. It's probably closer to 100 of people that say yes to being interviewed, and then that way I'm sharing their story. And also, after you do it enough, a good networker, which is the type of person you need to know, will naturally reciprocate. They're going to say something like, well, you've done so much for me that what can I do to help you? Who do you need to know? It just, again, it takes a little bit of time. It's probably not a first meeting ask. The ask is on your end to ask them what projects they're working on, who they need to know. And when you do that, you start to build, like I said, emotional equity, and they start to want to help you. And if you think about all the networking conversations you've had, I mean, really think about them. How often is it one sided? Outside of how are you doing today when they get on the phone or the Zoom call, think about how often I leave meetings. It's like they said, "How are you doing?" And the rest of the time they talked about themselves. And it's just a turnoff. So ask about the other person.
I know it's so
Get to know
obvious, but
them.
it happens to me too. And then it just like kind of is a mental check that probably not someone that's going to be deep in my network. I can think of a couple people that have there, there's that book I know you know about from Adam Grant, I think I don't know, about Give and Take, which is he did all this. Adam Grant's a social scientist, and he did all this research. There's givers and there's takers, and then there's matchers. And,
Mhm.
if you've got someone who's a taker, we don't typically put up for that with that for very long, even if we're not even conscious that we're doing it. And I just want to go back to this idea because some of you listening may be thinking, I'm not going to do a podcast, or compliance is too hard. I'm not comfortable on video. You could absolutely still interview someone. You can record it and then just have it transcribed and have someone else even write it up, or maybe it's part of your blog, or as Mark said, doing a LinkedIn article or even a post. People would be thrilled to be spotlighted like that. It feels like a new version of the Dale Carnegie How to Win Friends and Influence People, if you say their name. But this is a way to like do that in a broader way that wasn't around when that book was written.
Oh yeah, I mean, like you just mentioned, people love to be interviewed because everyone's favorite subject is themselves usually, and it's just a way to share it because then you become more, without saying I'm a connector. Your brand on if you start posting more on LinkedIn and people see you doing a podcast or even see the written posts or LinkedIn articles, without saying that you're a giver, you're showing you are, and people will feel like they get to know you. And you really build a strong personal brand, which makes it much more likely that they will help you, or people might even start reaching out to you. How can I
Yep.
help you?
Yep. That's
But it
great.
starts with asking what you can do with and for them.
Good. So, is there a final thought you want to leave people with today, Mark? So, for them to leverage and build their network?
I would say start reaching out and asking how you can help people. Definitely, just start with that. Ask them again, what projects are you working on? What connections are you looking for? Just keep it really simple, and so down the line, people will start asking you. But I mean, if on the simplest form, I would say do that because then you can build real relationships and really get to know someone.
Perfect. Thank you. Mark, if people want to get in touch with you, where's the best place for them to go?
MarkJCarter.com. All my social media links are there,
Perfect.
and my
Okay,
blog and
cool.
my podcast too.
Good. So check it out. Mark's a really good interviewer and he's obviously a giver. So thank you so much for giving us your time and your expertise today, Mark. I'm really
Thank
grateful.
you. It's
Yeah,
been
and
fun.
thank you to all of you listening and watching, whether you're watching us live or on the recording. I'm really grateful that you're here and inspired by Mark. I guess my question to you is, how can we help? There's a lot happening at Horse's Mouth in terms of courses. I'm launching a masterclass starting in November called The Extraordinary Advisor that is covering a lot of relationship building skills and other important things for financial advisors. But reach out if there's something I can do to point you in the right direction. You can find me on social media, on LinkedIn, Let's Link, on Facebook, a little bit on Instagram. And you can
A
find me
little
at
bit.
Ellen Rogan. A little bit, a little bit. I'm fairly inconsistent with that. But anyway, and you can learn more about me at ellenrogan.com. And so, as always, my question to you is, how big of a positive impact are you willing to make? And I would say, and how big of a network are you willing to serve based on what Mark shared with us today? Remember, be great and create great.